Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, January 29th, 2026. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. Joined as always on Tuesdays and Thursdays by Garrick, Hodge, and Mark Porter. We are shifting to off-season mode here, it appears. We're talking about, as you can see in the bottom scroll, for those of you playing at home on YouTube, the Twitter, or the Book of Face, you can see the 2026 schedule rolling in the scroll. I'm sure everyone's got opinions on that. We will touch on that in a bit. Ohio State is also, focused on maybe the last vestiges of the transfer portal. You'd be amazed if you saw how many kids are still in there. Looks to me about like 1,000, 2,000 kids are not going to find a spot, which is a bummer. But we will get to that. We've got some great video of your Glenville nose tackle who is coming, Mr. Perez. And then we will take your questions, etc. But first, Ohio State, needing to beef up the GPA, has gone to the Ivy League for an offensive lineman, the alma mater of my dad, by the way, Dartmouth. Different place back then, believe me, when you were up in the cold in the 50s with all boys. Not what it is now. But fantastic institution academically, not necessarily known as a football powerhouse. Garrick, what is going on with our Springfield guy coming home?
Yeah, young man's name is Vashon Washington, and it's not a long-term project. It's a guy that's coming to use his last year of college eligibility in Columbus. Like you said, Dan, this is a hometown guy that I think just has always wanted to be a Buckeye and is now going to have the opportunity to do so in his last year playing the sport. I would say it's a nice addition, but I would caution all the Bucknutters to get too excited about it because I think this is more of a depth piece than it is a guy that's going to be in contention for a starting role. Now, to give you a little bit of background on him, he's really made the most out of his career the past 2 years, taking over 700 career snaps at Dartmouth. He has experience at guard. He has experience at tackle. He's only allowed one career sack in that 700 career snaps. Now, obviously, he's not seen Big Ten defensive ends in the Ivy League, but obviously those are grown men too sometimes playing over there. So it's clear that Tyler Bowen, Ryan Day, Mark Pantoni, all these guys are, once again, we've beaten this drum a million times on this podcast and we'll beat it again. They value proven collegiate experience. And while it's not a given that this guy's game will translate to the Big Ten level, you're bringing in a nicely sized guy that's going to come in and compete for a job on the two deep, quite frankly, because he's not taking anyone's job on the starting five that I'm aware of. But so if all goes well, you'll probably, and this is the nicest way I can say it, probably be like, oh, yeah, that guy was on the team when we get to October. And heaven forbid he's listed as a tweak on the injury report or something like that. But in a pinch, I mean, Ohio State clearly sees something in Vashon and thinks that he can fill in nicely for a game or two if needed. But I think more than anything, this is a guy that, all right, let's get some proven depth and proven in terms of this is a guy that's played 700 career snaps. He's going to know the offensive scheme. And more importantly for him, I think it benefits him because he's going to live out his dream and finally donning scarlet and gray threads, even if it's a primary backup role.
Mark, one Springfield guy out, and Aaron Scott, one in Washington. Doubtful it was a trade. Your thoughts on him as a prepster, and then look, a 22-year-old who's played that many snaps is probably going to be a better in a pinch solution than a true freshman. I guess that could be the thinking. Mark, your thoughts on the whole deal here.
Yeah, we'll start in high school. And what I remember of him is the athletic ability. I thought he was probably good enough to play defensive tackle if he wanted to. He had that type of feet. And then that translated to being a great offensive lineman. He has the feet and pass protection where nobody's going to get around him. And that's what Ohio State loves about their offensive lineman. Julian played from one of the cleanest pockets in the Big Ten for a while. What you have in him is someone who has good enough feet to play here, but he might not have the size. He might have to put on a little weight, get a little more stout, maybe a little more punch. He would be serviceable for sure. But we don't want serviceable. I just did my chat yesterday, and serviceable got us in trouble because what serviceable means is we beat up the Big Ten, and then when you see a first-round pick against you, all of a sudden we're not imposing our will, and that's what we want out of our offensive lineman, a 320-pounder who just says, you know what, I know it's 3rd and 2, and I know we're running to the right-hand side, but screw you. Here we go. We're just going to blow you off the ball. You might get more of a stalemate out of a kid like this than a cave down the left side of the line or something like that. What I like about him is his multiple positions. He could be your 6th guy or 7th guy on the Ohio State line where maybe he's a center. Maybe he's a guard. Maybe he comes in and does something because he is a football player. You don't play 700 and some snaps and not come out at the other side of that really savvy and nuanced. So Garrick touched on all that stuff pretty adequately. That's what I remember out of high school. I think he's a kid from the Ivy League is not going to be a detriment in your locker room. He's going to be a positive influence. He's going to be a worker that's there every day. Those things are kind of knowns. So I think we're going to see more kids like this, and it's not sexy. It's not someone that's going to get you excited. And if we take 5 kids like this at different positions, maybe a receiver or whatever, one of them will be a guy that just surprises us, that goes in there. And I think that's going to be that type of a ratio where you keep taking these guys and then a couple of them will pop here and there. And you know what? Truthfully, you hope they don't. You hope that Ohio State's built well enough that we don't need to start popping these other guys that are, 5 stars that we brought in that we developed are the guys. So I think that's where we're at with this one. But nice addition. Add them to the class.
Also, injuries are not a variable in football. They're a constant. So you're going to need depth. Would it be good? I don't know the answer to this. I would love to see a statistic, and this is not going to be possible, but of the Division I football teams, power forward, how many started the same offensive line in every game last year? I don't think it'd be a huge number. Do you guys think? I think we're talking less than 20, 30%.
Yeah, definitely less than that. Just it's a statistical improbability with kids graduating and the NFL and numbers and yeah.
So definitely, and like they said, like we reiterated here, he's going to be smart. If you put him in a pinch, the mental overload, he'll be good with that. Considering Dartmouth, I think I just looked, it's like the 7th or 8th hardest school in the United States to get into. So good Lord, what they reject. Go look at one of those things. Look at the kids who are getting rejected from the Ivy League. Dartmouth turns away valedictorians like it's their job, but I digress. All right, Garrick.
Mm-hmm.
Are the coaches taking this time off? Are they in Lido Key just trying to find urban siesta key house? Are they chilling? Or are they trying to improve the Buckeyes? Take it away.
Yeah, they have all booked trips to Cancun. They're all in taking European trips, and I don't think they've worked in a month. I'm kidding. Yes, they are making use of the open period, which they are able to go all over the country and visit prospects for the 2027, 2028, and even 2029 recruiting classes. They have been relentless within the past couple weeks. And they don't have much time left in this open period. February is a dead period, so the coaches, I'm sure, are looking forward to that. But I did want to bring up a couple prospects that Ohio State is going to see. We won't be able to get to them all in this podcast because they've seen no shortage of them. But just starting off really quickly, they make sure to keep the foot on the gas pedal in terms of keeping their commits in the commitment section. They visited Brady Edmonds, the quarterback of 2027. Brian Day and Billy Fessler went out to California to see him. They visited the in-state Ohio guys, Kellen Weimer and Mason Wilt. And then so now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the guys I wanted to touch on. Mekhi Brown from Greenwich, Connecticut is a top 7. Greenwich. I always get that pronunciation wrong. And Dan always laughs, and it is what it is. We're going to get it right. We're going to have a quiz on Tuesday. Anyway, so Mekhi Brown, 6'7", 230 pounds. That is accurate information that you can have. And you can tell that Ohio State is really interested in this young man because they've sent 2 different coaches to visit him. Initially, it was Matt Patricia coming to visit the young man, and then this week it was Larry Johnson. So there is no shortage of interest in Mekhi, who was just offered by Ohio State this fall. Took a game day visit to Ohio State in November. Has no shortage of power programs after him. I mean, got teams like Georgia, Florida State, etc. So,
Mackay from?
What's that?
Mackay, where's he from?
Connecticut. Yep.
Okay. He's from Greenwich. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
But I was like, oh, man, I heard it again, but I'm not going to say that city.
No. There's a lot of boarding schools up there, and I thought he might be one of those guys who's implanted, but so be it.
Yep. Anyway, so Mackay's a guy that just at 6'7", 230 pounds, he's a very toolsy guy that probably needs a little bit more refinement, but just that frame alone gives you a lot to dream on. And we're going to keep it at edge rushers because, and speaking of commitments, Ohio State stopped in to visit their North Carolina commitment linebacker, Quentin Cypher, who they beat out Georgia for just a couple weeks ago. And they would also like to recruit one of his teammates, Rashard Streets, to Ohio State's 2027 recruiting class. Now, Rashad is a 6'4", 230-pound prospect out of Raleigh, North Carolina. He is in the top 100 prospects, or I guess he's technically 102. So top 102 prospects per 247 Sports' rankings. And I would say Mackay and Rashad are right at the top of the priority list in terms of edge rushers. So it's clear that these guys are being made a priority, and we did, or I should say Mark did, a fantastic evaluation of DJ Jacobs on Tuesday. They already got one in the fold, and they'd love another talented guy to get after it on the edge to pair it with. I'll do a little bit more of these in rapid fire. We've heard this name a lot on the podcast. Keenan Bailey stopped to see Mr. Brock Williams, Ohio State's top tight end priority in the 2027 class out of Libertyville, Illinois. He is a top 40 prospect in the 2027 class, 6'5", 210 pounds. And it's a three-way race for Brock with Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State all making a push. Ohio State's been right there with this recruitment from the very beginning, and I think they're going to be right there till the very end. Georgia has been surging of late. I still think it's neck and neck with the Bulldogs and Buckeyes, and I don't think we're going to have to wait too long to get an answer from Brock. I think that we could see something in possibly the next month or two. I mean, I don't think he wants to stretch it until official visits. He didn't really want to stretch it until this point, but he's being a little bit more conservative with his recruiting approach to make sure that he makes the right decision because he wants it to be one and done. He doesn't want to be one of those guys that flips. So
got some good choices.
Yes. Another one I thought was interesting that Billy Fessler went to go check out was, and this guy is going to be on the all-name team no matter where he goes, Wonderful Mons. His nickname is Wonderful Champ Mons. So you can call him Wonderful Mons or you can call him Champ Mons, whatever your preference is. But this young man is from Florida, Vero Beach, Florida, if you want to be specific. He is 6'2", 224 pounds. Within the top 255 prospects in the composite. Now, the interesting thing about him is that he started off as a 2028 prospect and recently reclassified into 2027. So the fact that they're still visiting him shows that there might be some interest in taking two quarterbacks if they find the right guy to pair with Brady Edmonds and if they can work that out. Now, I've seen one Wonderful. I'm just going to call him Wonderful because I think it's a fun name to say. Wonderful throw at an Ohio State recruiting camp last summer, and the guy is he's got a cannon. Yes. It's. I wanted to make that pun, but I was like,
it's too easy. It's just too easy.
I was that I if I made it, I couldn't let you do it, so I let you.
Thank you. I appreciate
take the reins on that one, but. Yes, he's got everything that you'd expect. The zip is there, the placement is there, the touch is there. And
is he Vero Beach High School?
Yep.
Tarvis Alford.
Yep. So TJ Alford is certainly in his ear. And I know that Ohio State was very high on him in 2028, so it's natural that they'd be very high on him in 2027 now that he's reclassified. Let's see. Two more I'll get into. Chris Whitehead out of Chesterfield, Virginia. Speaking of edge rushers, again, Larry Johnson went and visited this young man. He is a top 40 prospect in the 2027 recruiting class, 6'5", 230 pounds.
What high school?
Yeah, Lloyd C. Bird.
He's Richmond area. Okay.
That's the name of it. So, again, we're noticing a theme here that they're visiting high-profile edge rushers that they're trying to get in with. So they certainly would like at least another talented, dynamic pass rusher to pair with DJ Jacobs. So that one caught my attention. And then The last one, I feel like we're going to get accused of just being his agents with how often we've brought this guy up on Bucknuts. But Carlos Lachlan has visited David Gabriel George's and obviously is making no shortage of making it very clear that Ohio State's preference for running backs this cycle, number 1, 2, and 3, is David Gabriel George's. So, it's been an interesting time on the road. I have a thread up on the site if you want to track exactly some more visitors on where everybody's been. So couldn't get to all of them today, but just thought I'd give you an update on where some coaches have been and some of the more higher profile prospects that they're looking at for this cycle.
And we've talked about recruiting in the modern era. You're going to see the elite guys get even more love because we talked about the NFL comparison. What you're essentially seeing the Ohio State do is go out and try and get as many first-round draft picks as they can. I know people don't love Dan Lanning here, but I heard him say this, that what he learned from Nick Saban is in recruiting, you can get a first-round draft pick. Every kid can be a first-round draft pick. In the NFL, you get 1. So go out and get me 8. And then we go from there. Mark, I would like to ask you about an offer, and that is to Deontay Malone. Those of you that follow the site know that we tipped you off that this kid would be in contention for an offer. Could you bring us up to speed on who he is, where he is, and then your thoughts on him as a baller?
Yeah, I'm glad you were paying attention last year. We did a lot of raw talent workouts to check out guys like Elbert Hill and the kid from Avon. There were some Witherspoon. There were some big-time names through there. And Mark Harris, the trainer up there, said Deontay Malone will be the next one, okay? And I think that was in the boarding house a year ago, and, we talked about him. And, it takes time. The process, they always say, trust the process and keep working. And, he's a great player on both sides of the ball, much like Elbert Hill. He can line up at receiver and do damage. He runs the route tree. He gets in and out of breaks. But I think he's going to be a defensive back in college, where he's really fluid, his hips, he can turn and run, and he can run with the best of them. The 7-on-7 stuff he does kind of shows that off, and I got a little insight to that, and I get to see him work out every now and then on Sunday night. I think this Sunday night we're going to see him again, and I'll get some video, and he'll be one of those guys we dive deep into because he's local, and I get a chance to see him pretty often. But
how's his frame?
I think he's right around the 6 foot, and he's a thicker body. The pictures I have of him, and I kind of went back and checked them out again just to see. But, for a defensive back, he's got more than enough size. I wouldn't say he's in any way shorter or there's a size thing with him. There's on my tongue, I want to say he's going to be 6 foot or so, maybe more, but I want to go stand next to him again because I do this all the time. I stand next to a kid, and then I do it again a couple months later. And I'm like, oh, okay. And at this age, that's the job. Sure. And it's good. So there's no issue, though, with him being a 5'8" corner or 5'8" or something like that. Yeah, it's like
well, I'm not to interrupt you, but sometimes I see it. I'm like, oh, that guy's headed for the slot. I don't even assume they're going to be offering guys like that anymore. I mean, we could see it, but.
Yeah, he's a tackler. He's got physicality to him. He is in no way slight of build. I think we're really, I mean, I think he's listed, and that's the thing. I saw him listed at a couple different sizes, so I want to really make sure I'm dialed in on that. But I would give him close to what Brax is saying there.
Where would you put him in kind of the pantheon of Ohio defensive backs that you've seen? Is he a McNutt? Is he in the Brew category? Is he kind of on the doorstep of that? How would you kind of figure him in there? Because like I said, I think the offers are even more valuable now, considering the fact that, they're saying, hey, we want to pay you.
Yeah. I want to try to do this with Cleveland players because that's where he's from. But like Bryce West feels real comparable.
Okay, perfect.
Same type of size, same type of skill set. Bryce didn't play as much offense later in his career. It was all defense. But you get the point there. Mark Harris has trained Duran Grant, Denzel Ward, the who's who of corners, Marshawn Lattimore. The guys that come through that building every year, it brings me back, and it's bringing me back there for 20 years. But I'll ask him next time I see him to kind of stack him up in that group. And since he works with these guys daily, I'm interested to see what he'll say. But body types, Bryce West, Elbert Hill last year put on a show for me a bunch of times. And I want to say he's a lot like Elbert Hill, but I want to kind of make sure they're the same.
Gotcha.
Say that. And like I said, Sunday night, I talked to the Deontay Malone and his group of people, and I think he's going to be there this Sunday. So the cameras will be rolling.
All right, we are going to now. Actually, I'll tell you this. Let's do some recruiting here. Let's bring up our nose guard. What we're trying to do here is, as the dust has settled on the season and we got a little bit extra time to do some stuff, we're going back and making sure we have all of our Buckeye in the Sky videos for you to see who is coming to Ohio State. Mark obviously had great access to Jamir Perez. We did Sincere Johnson, I think, a couple weeks ago, who, by the way, has rocketed up the rankings. He's going to finish his high school pedigree as one of the top 3 or 4 linebackers in the country. Perez is, it's something the late, great Dwayne Long and I used to kvetch here routinely about the inability to bring as he used to call it, a floppy belly out of the South. It seems like we were always talking about these guys from Louisiana and Alabama sometimes, and getting deep into the recruitment, and then they would choose to stay closer to home. Ohio just hasn't produced, Mark can disagree with me here, the number of just true nose guards. And whether he's actually a one technique, we'll probably get a little detail, but I'm saying the size of a guy you put in the middle, and you take on, if everyone remembers Tony Siragusa, you pick up 2 blockers and let Ray Lewis create havoc. Mark, that is what I hope to see in our guy, Mr. Perez, who, by the way, was committed to Florida for a beat and then fixed it up. Tell us what you know, and 360 is no joke.
Yeah, lot to touch on here. We've been following him for a while. I'm going to pause it on this picture. You said something about the belly. When we do these things, we usually give these glowing reviews, but there's been no secret that this kid is 360 pounds plus, and he's been asked to lose weight. You can see it's all right here in the belly. It's not going to be hard to lose once he gets in a weight program. I'm going to make not excuses for him, but I'm going to get the story or the talking points out of Glenville. These first couple clips are him an offensive guard. I usually use some of the film that I shoot. You see him walking right there. Don't like that, okay? The reason he's walking around after these plays, you see the limp there, he's got a very bad hoof, okay? And his leg or his ankle has been hurt now going on a year or two, and it took a lot out of him. They played him on offense only for a while, and he could not fire out the way he used to, okay? And there's points in the season where he was healthier than others, but when you get into some of his better tape, he looks like you're saying, and you're going to see it right here. This is just stack somebody, shed them, throw them to the side, and make the play in the backfield and just look like a mountain or a monster in the middle. This is the guy that can fire out who's healthy. Now, over the summer, he was asked to lose that weight. He was injured. You know what? You know how you lose weight, Dan? You got to condition, and you got to run, and you got to do it for long periods of time. And when you got a bad hoof and you can't run and you can't whatever, it's like a vicious circle of, well, I'm just sitting around and I'm not losing the weight. In fact, I'm putting on a little weight. So he hasn't really been healthy enough to get this extra weight off. But you see when he's got both legs firing, boy, he lives up to the Vince Wilforks or the Tony Siragusa type. Now here he is on offense just being a dominator, and you see the power, and he ragdolls people. So it's there. But as that season went on, he wasn't practicing much. He was just showing up on game days and trying to fight through it. Offense first, and then defense when they needed him at key times. He would come in and stuff up the middle. So yeah, it was almost to a point where he probably shouldn't have been playing. So yeah, you could see in those clips, you could just kind of doing his job, and then I'm not going to put any more pressure on this leg. I'm just going to wait for the next play. And it was that type of, you could say, tough man mentality, but it's also not the best footage of him that we could show.
I'll tell you what, I don't think Matt Patricia was a defensive coordinator when we started recruiting him, but he has chosen the right spot to become a nose guard. Patricia is, and we're going to have some boarding house items on this coming up, he has body types that he likes, and this is what he wants in the middle, okay? So we're turning into nose guard U here. Back-to-back first-round draft picks. And, guys, go look it up. See who else has done that the past 2 years. I think the answer is going to be only Ohio State. If you look at ESPN just did this based on production in the NFL, Ohio State is officially this year defensive line U and wide receiver U. So this would fit right in there. But this is one of those guys to me he's such an outlier in high school. He's just not, he's so much bigger. There just aren't that many guys like that. Like he's never going against people his same size and such. I see him as like a giant thing of clay for these people to get their hands on. And there's just only so many human beings on the earth that provide you this template. So I'm actually really excited about him. It might be 2 years. I mean, they might have to recondition his body and get him in the nutrition program and stuff. That's fine. Keep in mind, he's a Glenville pipeline guy. So I don't think there's as much fear about kind of investing some time in him and seeing him boogie out. The Glenville guys tend to stick with it. Go ahead, except for Bryce West.
Yeah, and you know what? Just the truth be told, I don't care if he's overweight. That doesn't bother me. I mean, it didn't bother Tony Saragusa and those other guys. If you can play with that much weight, do your job. You know, stuff up the middle. You have one job. If you got to weigh 360, 380 to do it, that's fine. We wouldn't like that. You can do it at less weight. But for some reason, I think we make too much of this just for this position. This is like the one position where you can waddle out there like a duck on first and second down, and your jersey can be hanging out or untucked, and it doesn't look good. But that's that job. That's that area of the field where, okay, so what? You know, so I as I'm sitting here like, he just made a big deal about his weight. There's a side of me that doesn't care as long as he plays. You see those clips on film that look good. You do that, I'll let you play it whatever you want, kid. You give me their hustle to the whistle. You see those other clips we had where you're blocking your guy and standing there and walking around. Now we got problems.
Right. And believe me, he's going to go up against guys. What I've been told is that it's not even the offensive lineman or defensive lineman that the linemen struggle with. It's that, for example, that linebacker that's blitzing now, that's 22 years old and weighs 240 pounds when you're a freshman, much harder to block. And I'll tell you this about floppy bellies because I know you guys love story time. Who was the defensive tackle? I mean, this was the floppiest belly of all time. He played for the Saints, and I think his name was Grady Little. Is that correct?
Or Grady Jackson, maybe.
Was it Grady Jackson?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
He was the floppiest belly of all time. I'm not kidding.
Snacks Harrison and all there's a lot of guys that's what I'm saying. It doesn't bother me too much.
It would bother you if this happened to you. So I covered the Redskins for a little bit, now the Commanders, and the opposing locker room is not big. It's too small for the amount of people you have in there after the game. And I was not number one on the beat. That guy had the home team, the Redskins, so I had the visiting locker room. For those of you that haven't been in an NFL locker room, these dudes are not clothed. You get in there 11 minutes after the game, and they're still quite sweaty, and it's a tight thing. And I turned, and old Grady Jackson was walking to the bathroom to take a shower at the time with just his towel on, and, his stomach was – he turned, and we bumped into each other, and that looked like I had run a marathon because his sweaty belly hit my clothing and left a mark on there. That shirt got thrown out in the parking lot. So you want to talk? I have true floppy belly NFL experience. I've never been hit, but I'll never forget that. He was Grady Jackson. That's my guy, LV Buckeyes. Yes. Yep. And his floppy belly, I can guarantee you, quite floppy, and was about 2 feet in front of him. Different zip codes, but I digress. All right.
Do you guys want while we keep it, one more thing on Jamir Perez, do you want a Larry Johnson quote on what he thinks of Jamir Perez a day early? We call that a tease in the business sometimes.
Do it.
All right. So this came from Cotton Bowl Media Day, which before that uneventful game that ended up transpiring a few days later, we had the opportunity to go around and ask whoever on the team you wanted whatever questions. So my job as the recruiting analyst, I wanted to obviously go around and ask every assistant coach about the incoming recruits. So Larry was generous enough to give me a few moments of his time and talk about each of the 6 signees on the defensive line. If you want to know what he said about all 6 of them, you can read that on Bucknuts tomorrow morning on Friday. But to give you a tease, like we talked about, this is what he said verbatim in terms of Jamir Perez, and I can get Dan and Mark's reaction to it. JJ was one of those guys we waited on to see what was going to happen. He came to a recruiting camp last summer and did very well there. He really competed. Now, we do just have to watch his weight. It's not our biggest concern having a guy that big, but he's got a chance to play that nose position and be a guy like Caden McDonald, a guy who can knock the line of scrimmage back. We might not ask much from him in the pass rush game, but in the run game, I think he's going to be a real factor. So I'm looking forward to having him. Mark, does that kind of seem in line with what you were thinking?
I said that without saying that in a long way formed and again gave you visual proof. Here's plays where he did his job, but there's no motor. Here's plays where there's a motor. We'd like the motor version better. And you know what? There's this false equivalency that, you know what? The lighter you are, the more you're going to have a motor. I just think you could play with a motor in any weight if you're really that type of guy and wired that way. You're just going to give effort, even if it wears you down to a pulp. So we just don't know. You know, either way, I'll take them.
We're betting on physics.
Exactly. Like you said, there's not many humans like this. You got to take shots at them. And, hey, and to this kid, you have every opportunity in the world to go be a star in this defense. I mean, like, the world is your oyster when you step on campus. You do the right things. You're going to be a player. But this could get away from you if you don't, embrace. And you know what? I'm in fairness, the people at Glenville said he's a culture guy. When the other guys are doing it, he's there and he's with everybody. He's working just as hard. He'll buy into that type of rolling momentum. But, he came from another school before Glenville. So, they had to get him into the Glenville ways, and which are going to be the Ohio State ways. Glenville very much modeled themselves after that program.
Going to work out well for Glenville. Might get a new gym after Arvell gets picked second in the draft. It looks like he's guaranteed. Like I see him everywhere. Arvell might want to send Deontay Moore a little thank you card and put a couple shekels in there, because Deontay Moore not going, I think, got him to the Jets. We'll see. But I want to say this, my last NFL thing. Caden McDonald I have never been more – that's a stretch. I am so confident that guy is going to be a great NFL player. And I was thinking about this the other day. He prepped in Georgia in Gwinnett County and was Gwinnett County Defensive Player of the Year. Then he comes to Ohio State and does what he did. You can't have a better pedigree and will be a more proven prospect. I'm noticing there's a lot of talk about the draft right here. By the way, for those of you draft geeks, every single mock draft out there has Sonny Styles going to the Cowboys at 12, which Marco and I will have a good chuckle on that, because you want to talk about a kid we've been following since he was 14 years old, and for them to end up in Dallas would be amazing. All right, Garrick, I got a quick question for you. Any quick thoughts from you guys on the schedule? It looks to be far more challenging than this year's, even though we discussed this, that last year when the schedule came out, they opened with the number one team. They had Penn State looming as the number one team, and then, they didn't cooperate. Your thoughts, Garrick, and then Mark, maybe on your initial thoughts on the schedule.
Well, the first thing I wanted to say, what's the opposite of a thank you card? Because the easy joke to make is, instead of sending Deontay Moore a thank you card by being picked by the Jets, I'm getting picked by the Jets. That's the opposite of a thank you card to Deontay Moore. Anyway,
good point.
But I digress, to quote the infamous Dan Rubin. All right, so in terms of the football schedule, even before we knew the order of what was coming out, I said that it's the toughest Ohio State schedule I've seen in a long time. I would have to rack my brain to think of when I could find a schedule on par. But it's tricky to compare now, because obviously you don't know that all these teams that are on their schedule are going to live up to their billing. If you would have looked at last year's schedule, you're like, oh, God, that matchup with Penn State is going to be for the Big Ten title game. And obviously Penn State was a colossal disappointment in the 2025 season. But I'm just going into this assuming that all these teams are going to live up to the national billing, which is never a good assumption, because no team ever does. Or not all of them ever do. But I would say I'm guessing probably 10-2. I don't necessarily know where I would go with those two losses, but I think that this is the type of schedule where, after that first 3 weeks, and the first 3 weeks includes a game on the road against Texas, you get a couple breaks here and there, but you also have to face Illinois, which Ohio State's going to win that game, right? But they're also facing guys that are going to be on their level physically a little bit. Like, what I mean by that is like when you go into recovery on Monday, you're like, oh yeah, we faced some actual dudes. We didn't just play. And no offense to Mark when we say this, Kent State, because that's looming for week 3 as a get-right game either way against
the Fighting Porters.
Yes. I think Mark would probably still start at tight end. He ended up going to Kent State right now. But, yeah, I think 10-2 is kind of where I'm leaning right now, and I know that seems just sort of disrespectful, but there's 5 legit games to where it's a non-zero chance they could lose. And I would probably pick them to win every game right now just based on like Vegas favorite point spreads, but just playing the odds, just 10-2 with this type of schedule where it's just one after the other. People like to always talk about the mythical SEC grind. Well, this is a Big Ten grind right here. And I think Ohio State has the roster and the coaching staff to weather that storm and be okay with a couple of setbacks. But I'd say probably 10-2, 11-1 is where I'm leaning. I'm not going to say 9-3. I'm not going to put Dan into a state of cardiac arrest. I think this is a playoff team with a playoff offense, and we'll have to see how the defensive pieces kind of align. But if there's anyone I'm trusting to put the guys in the best position, it's certainly Matt Patricia. So I'd say 10-2, 11-1 is where I'm leaning right now. But the problem with I have is at 10-2 is I don't know where those losses are coming from. So maybe after a spring session and a fall camp, I'm going to go, okay, maybe 11-1 sounds better. But just the week after week, and a lot of these teams are on the road. Like, for example, if Iowa was at home, you probably wouldn't lose sleep over it, right? But playing Iowa at Iowa, a place that has been a house of horrors for Ohio State over the years, again, I don't think they're going to lose that game, but it's not that one that you go into it going, well, just kick up our feet on Saturday and we're going to win 31-0 because we're Ohio State. So
I think 10-2, although I think 10-2 now is an easier prediction also because you're going to the playoffs.
For sure.
10-2, you might even be hosting a game.
You might even get in at 9-3 with this schedule if everyone lives up to their billing.
We're not doing.
I know. We
don't do 9-3. I've tried to tell people that 9-3. I don't like 9-3. Not double-digit wins makes me nauseous. So
I get it.
I'm not doing that.
But worst case scenario, 9-3, I still think they'd have a shot at the playoffs if everyone lived up to their billing.
Yeah. There would need to be some kind of like food poisoning outbreak at a game or something for me to buy that. I don't know. Just whatever. Mark, your thoughts.
I listened to Dave Biddle yesterday, and I have to say, for a bunch of Ohio State homers, this is the most rational prediction.
It's because they're going to make the playoff. They would not have predicted that if the old system was in effect. Trust me.
And maybe there is something to that where there just feels like you could be a little more honest. And I think the most honest thing that you guys both said, and this is what I was going to say, is I don't know where these 2 losses come, but we just know the game of football. We just know there's enough tough teams. We've seen Ohio State get tripped up before. And we almost say, okay, in a season in this day and age, if you lose a game, so what? If you lose 2, so what? You're in Alabama. That's
that.
Funny.
Now that, Matt, you deserve to be called out for your comedy value there. Matt Reynolds, 9-3, we aren't Alabama. Now that is a good joke. Have a great day.
9-3, Julian Sane gets hurt and something else goes wrong.
Mark, are you trying to get struck by lightning, dude? What are you doing?
I'm saying. Like, this has been the most rational predictions you guys have ever given, because in that 10-2, you factored in something like that. Hey, we have someone out for a couple games, and hey, they won a couple, but they lost the tough one here. Those curveballs are in every season, and we hate to be, predict stuff like that. But yeah, sitting here 9 months, away from the season, it looks pretty good for Ohio State. And I wouldn't be surprised if they ran the table. That's what I'm saying. Like, as easy as you could say, we don't do 9-3, we also do 12-0 too. Like, whatever the chances are that there are going 9-3, the same chances are of going 12-0. But I think it's a very rational attitude to have for all fans right now that we're going to go to the playoffs next year, and we expect that. How we get there could be a little bit of a bump here, a bump there. And you know what? Those bumps usually make us better. It didn't this year, though. I thought that getting tripped up, by Indiana, you'd see us, team. But, hey, Miami and Indiana were the 2 best teams in the country, and you're a field goal kicker away from, different story.
I don't know if you guys have looked around. Indiana's schedule is a joke. Go look at their first 5 games before they play Ohio State.
Yeah, they'll be undefeated headed into the Ohio State game for sure.
It is. Signetti must have some pull. I mean, whatever they've done.
I'm pulling it up just to emphasize.
Okay,
that.
but this is like, remember 2 years ago, they avoided everybody with a winning record, and we whacked them. And then listen to their schedule, Garrick. I'm vamping for you here. Tell me when you're ready to go.
I'm ready.
Go ahead.
All right, so they open with the vaunted North Texas Mean Green before facing the Howard Bison, and then close out the dreaded non-conference slate with the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers.
Oh,
my apologies to the Hilltoppers. And then they open the Big Ten schedule with Northwestern, and then they continue that on with Rutgers. And this is the last game before they play Ohio State. It's by far their toughest one, but still a very winnable game in terms of Kurt Signetti's prowess at Nebraska. So that is your 6 contests that Indiana have before they welcome Ohio State to Bloomington.
I said this yesterday, and I believe it. Yes, we see the schedule and get a little stressed. Believe me, when the other people are looking at the schedule and they see Ohio State on there, they are not penciling in a W. Maybe they are penciling it in. They're not putting it in pen, okay? So it works both ways. All right, we got a little fired up there. And, of course, 40 minutes. At 25 minutes of every show, I think, what are we going to talk about? And then here we are. Our guys will be all over it this weekend. Keep in mind, Garrick is on the case. Our staff is out recruiting. We'll have all the info on that. Be interesting to see how commitments are going to go now in the new kind of era. So we'll be on top of that if they come. Otherwise, have a good one. Nutter.